I hired a cleaning lady to deep clean my son's house while he and his wife were away for the week. 2 hours in, she called me. I could barely understand her. She was shaking so hard. "Sir," she said, "there's a door in the back of the house that's locked from the outside and I can hear someone behind it. I think somebody's in there." I drove over faster than I've driven in 30 years, and when I got that door open, everything I thought I knew about my son fell apart in front of me. Before I tell you the rest, do me a favour. If you believe old people deserve to be treated with dignity right up to their last breath, hit that subscribe button. And in the comments, tell me what time it is where you're watching from. I like knowing who's out there. My name is Walter Crane. I'm 67 years old and I've lived in Columbus, Ohio, my whole life. For 35 years, I worked as a claims investigator for a mid-sized insurance company. That's a fancy way of saying I spent my career catching people in lies, staged car accidents, fake slip and falls, widows who weren't really widows, fires that started a little too conveniently. You learn to read people when that's your job. You learn that the truth leaves marks and lies leave gaps. And if you're patient enough, the gaps always show you where to look. I retired 3 years ago. I thought I was done with all of it. Done with paperwork. Done with catching liars. Done with the ugly things people do to each other for money. I bought myself a table saw and started fixing up old rocking chairs in my garage. And I figured that was how the rest of my life would go. Quiet, sawdust, coffee getting cold while I worked. I never once imagined the biggest lie I'd ever uncover would be sitting in my own family, wearing my own last name. Let me back up and tell you about my son, because you can't understand what happened unless you understand who Marcus used to be. Marcus is 39 now. He's my only child. His mother, my wife Carol, passed away when he was 19, and for a long time it was just the two of us against the world. He was a good kid. Not perfect, but good. He used to sit on the kitchen counter while I made dinner and tell me every single thing that happened at school, down to what the other kids ate for lunch. When he was little, he'd fall asleep on the couch waiting for me to get home from a late shift. And I'd carry him to bed and he'd mumble, "Night, Dad," without ever waking up. Those are the memories that make what he did later so hard to hold. He went into finance, got himself licensed, worked his way up, and now he's a wealth management advisor. He wears good suits and talks a lot about portfolios and diversification. He does well. Around 140 a year last I knew. Which is why, later, when I found out what he'd been doing for money, I couldn't make it add up. He didn't do it because he was desperate. He did it because he was greedy. And those are two very different things. Everything shifted when he met Danielle. Danny, she goes by. She's 36 and she runs a home decor boutique downtown called Ivory and Oak. Candles that cost $40, linen napkins, that kind of place. Everything in her world has to look a certain way. The first time Marcus brought her to my house, she walked in, looked around at my furniture, and said, "Oh, this is very lived in." She smiled when she said it, but I've been reading faces my whole life, and that smile didn't reach anywhere near her eyes. I told myself I was being unfair. A father always thinks nobody's good enough for his son. So I kept my mouth shut and I tried. I really tried to like her. 4 years ago, I did something I thought was the right thing. I owned a second house. It was the house Carol and I had raised Marcus in, over on Larkspur Lane. A solid 4-bedroom with a big backyard and a converted sunroom off the back that Carol had loved. After she died, I couldn't live there. Too many ghosts, so I'd moved into a smaller place across town and rented Larkspur out for years. When Marcus and Danny got married, I handed them the keys. I kept the deed in my own name, mostly out of habit. 35 years of investigating fraud teaches you to keep a paper trail, but I told them the house was theirs to live in. No rent, for as long as they wanted it. "Dad, this is huge," Marcus said, and for a second he looked like the kid on the kitchen counter again. "You have no idea what this means." I believed him, that's the thing I keep coming back to. I believed every word. Now here's the part of the story you need to hold on to because it's the whole thing. When I moved into Larkspur, my mother lived with me. Marcus's grandmother, Eleanor Crane. Everybody called her Nell. My mother was 88, sharp as a tack most days, a little forgetful on others, but the kind of forgetful where she'd lose her glasses, not the kind where she'd lose herself. She'd sold her own condo a few years back, and the money from that sale, a little over $200,000, went into an account that was supposed to be for her care. She had her social security and a small pension from my late father's railroad job on top of that. She wasn't rich, but she was comfortable, and she was independent, and she was mine to look after. When Marcus and Danny took over Larkspur, the plan was that Mum would keep living there. It was her house too, in every way that mattered. There was a caregiver's suite in the back, that old sunroom, all set up for her, with a good bed and her chair and her photos. Marcus said he wanted her close, said it'd be good for her to be around family, said Danny had always wanted to learn from an older woman. I moved out, Mum stayed, and I visited every Sunday. For about 6 months, everything seemed fine. Then slowly the visits got harder to schedule. Marcus would call the night before. "Hey Dad, Grandma had a rough day, maybe give it a week." Or, "Danny's got the whole family thing Sunday, can we push it?" I understood. People are busy. But 6 months turned into a year, and I realised I hadn't actually seen my own mother in person in a long time. Then, about 14 months ago, Marcus called me and said the words that I now know were the beginning of the con. "Dad, we made a decision about Grandma. We got her a spot at Maplewood, the memory care place out in Dublin. She needs more than we can give her here." I was blindsided. Memory care? Marcus, she doesn't have dementia. She loses her glasses, she's not... "It's gotten worse, Dad. You haven't been around to see it. She wanders at night. She left the stove on twice. We can't watch her 24/7, and it's not safe. Maplewood is the best place in the region. They have a waiting list a mile long, and we got her in." I felt terrible. I felt like a failure. Here I'd handed off my own mother and hadn't even noticed she was slipping. Guilt is a powerful thing. Guilt makes you agree to things you'd otherwise question. "I want to see the place," I said. "I want to visit her." "Of course, but Dad, listen. The first few weeks they told us no visitors. It's a transition thing. Familiar faces set her back, make her agitated, make her want to leave. The staff was really clear about it. And that's how it started. First it was the transition period. Then it was, she had a bad week, the nurse said hold off, no. Then it was, honestly, Dad, she gets so upset after you leave, she cries for hours. The staff asked us to space the visits out. Then it was COVID protocols. Then it was a flu outbreak on her floor. Then it was, she doesn't really remember much anymore. It might be kinder to just remember her how she was. Every excuse was reasonable on its own. That's how a good lie works. You never tell the big lie. You tell 100 small, reasonable ones, and you let the person build the big lie themselves, in their own head, so they never think to question it. I know that. It was my job to know that. And they used it on me anyway, because when it's your own son telling you, you don't investigate. You trust. Maplewood cost $4,200 a month. Marcus set it up so I'd send my share, $2,200, to him. And Mum's own pension and social security covered the rest, and he'd forward the whole payment to the facility, so it was clean and simple. Every month, like clockwork, I sent that money. For 14 months, $50,000 and change, out of my own pocket, to keep my mother somewhere nice. You already know where this is going. I didn't. Not yet. So we come to a Tuesday morning in April. My phone rings and it's Marcus, and he skips right past hello. "Dad, I need a favour." "No, how are you?" "No, how have you been?" Straight to it, the way he always did now. "Sure," I said. "What's up?" Danny got Ivory and Oak featured in Hearth and Home. The magazine. It's a big deal, huge for the business. They want to do a photo spread at the house. Our place next week. Lifestyle shoot, whole thing. And the house is a wreck. We need it deep cleaned, top to bottom, before the photographer comes. Baseboards, windows, the works. "Okay," I said, "so hire a cleaning service." That's the favour. We're leaving Thursday for a buyer's expo in Scottsdale. We'll be gone the whole week, and we won't be back till the day before the shoot. There's no time to be here to let cleaners in and supervise. But you've got a key, you're retired, you've got the time. Can you set it up and let them in? We'll pay for the whole thing, obviously. Just make sure it's spotless. Danny's really stressed about it. I sat there with my coffee halfway to my mouth, and I remember this odd feeling passing over me. 14 months. They couldn't find a single afternoon to take me out to see my own mother. But they could call me the second they needed their house scrubbed for a magazine. I should have felt angrier than I did. Mostly I just felt tired. "Fine," I said. "I'll take care of it." "You're a lifesaver. There's one thing, Dad. The room off the back, the old sunroom. Just have them skip it. It's locked. We're using it for storage, boxes and stuff for the shoot. Don't worry about it." "Skip the sunroom," I repeated. "Sure." Great. I owe you. Click. No goodbye. I looked at the phone for a long moment. Something about the sunroom instructions snagged on my brain, the way a thread snags on a nail, but I couldn't tell you why yet. My mother had lived in that sunroom. Now it was full of magazine boxes. People changed rooms around. It meant nothing. I called a woman named Yolanda Reyes. Years ago, Yolanda had been a home health aide on a case I worked. An insurance thing, elderly man, suspicious injury claim, turned out to be legitimate and heartbreaking. She'd struck me back then as one of the most decent people I'd ever met, gentle with her patients, sharp as anyone. She'd left healthcare and started her own cleaning company, Fresh Start, and we'd stayed loosely in touch. Christmas cards, that kind of thing. Walter Crane, she said when she picked up. Now there's a name I haven't heard in a while. I told her what I needed. Deep, clean, 4-bedroom on Larkspur, my son's place. They were out of town. She said she could do it that Friday, bring her crew, have it done in a day. There's a room in the back they want left alone, I told her. Storage, locked, just skip it. You got it, she said. Friday morning I drove over to let her in. Marcus and Danny were already gone, off to Arizona. The house looked the way it always looked now. White and grey, everything matching, everything staged. Danny had turned my old family home into a catalogue. The walls were covered in framed photos of the two of them. Weddings, beaches, ski trips, all of it perfect and smiling. Not one photo of me, not one photo of my mother. It was like Carol and I had never existed in that house at all. Yolanda took it in the way I did, quietly, professionally. Big job, she said, but we'll get it done. I showed her around, kitchen, bedrooms, the 2 bathrooms upstairs. When we passed the hallway to the back, she nodded at the sunroom door. It had a deadbolt on it, on the outside. I noticed that, and I filed it away, the way you file away a detail you don't understand yet. And I told myself people put locks on storage rooms all the time. That's the one to skip, I said. Skipping it? She said. I gave her the key to the front, told her to call if she needed anything, and I drove home. 20 minutes in decent traffic. I got back to my garage, put on my apron, and went back to the rocking chair I was refinishing. I lost myself in the work the way you do when your hands know something better than your head does. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Yolanda's name on the screen. The second I answered, I knew something was wrong. Her voice wasn't her voice. It was thin and shaking, and Yolanda Reyes was not a woman who shook. Walter, she was almost whispering. Walter, I need you to come here right now. My stomach dropped. What happened? Is somebody hurt? That room in the back, the locked one. I wasn't going to touch it, I promise, but I was cleaning the hallway right outside it, and I heard something. She took a breath that hitched. Walter, there's someone in there, behind the door. I heard a voice. Somebody said help. Somebody's locked in that room. Everything stopped. The chair, the sawdust, the cold coffee, all of it fell away. Don't open it, I said. Don't touch anything. I'm coming right now. I made a 20-minute drive in 11. I don't remember the drive, honestly. I remember gripping the wheel so hard my hands ached. I remember running every yellow light in the city. My whole career, I'd walked into houses and found the things somebody didn't want found. A hidden body in an insurance case. A second family a man had kept secret for a decade. The gaps where the lies lived. But I'd never once had that cold, sick feeling I had now, because this time the gap was in my own family, and I was terrified of what was going to be on the other side of it. Yolanda was standing on the front porch when I pulled up, her arms wrapped around herself, even though it wasn't cold. Her crew was clustered near their van, wide-eyed. She met me at the steps. It stopped for a while, she said. But I knocked, real soft, and I said, "Hello, is someone there?" And a voice answered. An old voice, Walter. A woman. She said, "Please. Just please." I already knew. Somewhere in the back of my mind. From the second Yolanda said the word old, I knew, and I refused to let myself know it, all the way up the porch and down the hall. Because if I let myself know it, I don't think my legs would have carried me. The deadbolt was the cheap kind, brass, screwed into the frame from the outside. My hands were shaking so bad it took me 3 tries to slide it back. I turned the knob and pushed the door open. The room was dim. The curtains were drawn and pinned shut. The air was stale and hot, and it smelled like a room that hadn't been aired out in a long time. My mother's good bed was gone. In its place was a metal-framed twin bed with a thin mattress and one blanket. There was a plastic commode chair in the corner, a mini fridge, a stack of paper plates, a jug of water, half empty. And in a chair by the window, in a nightgown that hung off her like it belonged to a bigger woman, sat my mother, Eleanor Crane, Nell, 88 years old. She was so thin I didn't recognise her for a second. Her hair, which she'd kept set and curled her whole life, was flat and greasy. Her cheeks had sunk in. Her hands, folded in her lap, looked like paper over bone. She turned her head toward the light from the doorway, slow, blinking, like someone who hadn't seen a door open in a very long time. "Walter," she said. Her voice cracked on my name. "Walter, is that you, or am I dreaming again? Or am I don't cry. I want you to understand that." I sat across a table from men who'd burned down their own businesses, and I never so much as blinked. But I crossed that room, and I got down on my knees in front of my mother's chair, and I took her hands in mine. And I broke. Just came apart. "It's me, Mum, it's me. I'm here." "I thought you weren't coming back," she whispered. "They said you knew. They said you knew I was here and you didn't want me." Tears ran down into the creases of her face. I kept thinking, my Walter wouldn't do that. But it's been so long, I couldn't remember what was real anymore. Behind me in the doorway, Yolanda had her hand over her mouth. I heard her start to cry too. "You listen to me." I held my mother's face in my hands, gentle as I could, because she felt like she'd break. "I did not know. I swear to you on Carol's grave. I did not know. They told me you were at Maplewood, in memory care. I've been paying for it for over a year. They told me you didn't want visitors. They lied to me, Mum. They lied to both of us, and I believed them, and I will spend the rest of my life making that right." She looked at me for a long moment, and something in her face settled, like a door closing on a draft she'd lived with too long. "I don't have dementia, Walter," she said quietly. "I want you to know that. I know what day it is. I know what year it is. I'm not confused. They just told everyone I was." That was the moment. That right there. Whatever grief and horror was flooding through me, underneath it, something else was starting to burn. Cold, steady. The kind of thing that doesn't shout. The kind that gets a legal pad and starts writing. "Yolanda," I said without taking my eyes off my mother. "Call 911. Tell them we have an elderly woman who's been confined and neglected. Tell them we need medics and we need the police. And tell them to send adult protective services." "Already dialing," she said. I helped my mother up out of that chair. She weighed almost nothing. Her legs shook. She said she hadn't walked much beyond the commode and the bed in weeks, and I half carried her down the hall into the living room, into the light, and set her on the couch that used to be my couch. I got her water in a real glass. I found a sweater and put it around her shoulders, and I sat next to her and held her hand while the sirens came up the street. She flinched at the sound. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, Mom," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong. Those are the good guys. They're coming to help. And the people who did this to you, they're the ones in trouble. I promise you that." The medics came first. Then a Columbus police officer named Officer Danville. Then, about 10 minutes later, a grey sedan with county plates, and out of it stepped a woman I'd worked next to on and off for years. Rachel Nunez. Adult Protective Services. She'd been an investigator when I was one, just on the human side of things, while I was on the money side. She saw me on that couch and stopped cold. "Walter, what are you doing here?" "This is my son's house," I said, and the words tasted like rust. "That's my mother. They told me she was in a memory care facility. I found her locked in the back room 10 minutes ago. I didn't know she was here. I swear to God I didn't know." I watched Rachel's face do the whole cycle. Shock. Then the professional flatness coming down over it like a shade. She'd seen everything a person could do to another person. Even so, I saw her jaw tighten. "Okay," she said. "Walk me through it. From the beginning." I told her everything. The house, the caregiver's suite, the Maplewood story, the 14 months of payments, the excuses, the phone call about the cleaner, the locked door. She took notes on a tablet, and Officer Danville photographed the room, the deadbolt on the outside of the door, the commode, the mini-fridge. The paper plates, the pinned curtains. The medics checked my mother's vitals and their faces got very serious, very fast. Dehydrated, malnourished, pressure sores starting on her hips from sitting too long. They wanted her at the hospital immediately. She wouldn't let go of my hand. "I'm coming," I told her. "I'll be right behind the ambulance. I am not leaving you. Not ever again." "Promise?" "I promise." They took her to Riverside. I followed. And in the waiting room, sitting next to Rachel Nunez while doctors worked on my mother, the real shape of the thing started coming out. "I pulled the county records while we drove," Rachel said. "Walter, there's no Maplewood placement. There's no record of Eleanor Crane at any licensed facility in the state. I called Maplewood directly. They've never heard of her. There was never a bed. There was never a waiting list. There was never any of it." I already knew, and hearing it out loud still landed like a punch. "The money," I said. "I've been sending Marcus $2,200 a month for over a year, and Mom's pension and Social Security were going to him too, to pay the facility." "There is no facility." Rachel looked at me. "Then that money went somewhere." "Check the account the condo money went into," I said. My investigator's brain was already awake now, running down the list the way it had 1,000 times before, except this time every name on the list was mine. She sold her condo, $200,000 give or take, into a care account. If he had signature authority on that, or power of attorney. Did he have power of attorney? I closed my eyes. About 2 years ago, Marcus had brought over some paperwork one Sunday, said it was to make things easier so he could handle Grandma's medical stuff and her banking if she ever couldn't. Mum had signed it. I'd witnessed it. I'd thought I was helping. "He has power of attorney," I said. I watched her sign it. I helped him get it. Rachel didn't say anything for a second. Then, quietly, "That's how these things almost always happen, Walter. Somebody the person trusts. You didn't do this. He did." The doctor came out 90 minutes later. My mother was severely dehydrated and malnourished. Stage 1 pressure ulcers. A urinary infection that had gone untreated long enough to make her feverish and, on her worst days, confused, which was almost certainly where the dementia the neighbours half believed had come from. There was no dementia. There was a woman being slowly starved and left to rot in a locked room, and a fever will make anyone sound lost. They wanted to keep her for several days. I went in to see her. She was in a hospital bed with an IV in her arm and colour already coming back into her face just from fluids. And she looked at me and said, "This bed is so soft, Walter." And I had to step into the hallway so she wouldn't see me lose it again. That night I drove home to an empty house that had never felt emptier. I made coffee I didn't drink, and I took down a box from the top shelf of my closet, my old work files, and on top of it was my retired investigator's credential. Laminated, "Retired," stamped across it in red. I held it in my hand for a long time. 35 years I'd spent proving that people lie and finding out exactly how. I knew how to pull records. I knew how to build a timeline. I knew what a prosecutor needed and what a defense lawyer would try. I knew the difference between a case that falls apart and a case that holds, and I knew, sitting at my kitchen table at 2 a.m, that I was going to build the second kind. Marcus thought he was clever. He thought he'd told me 100 reasonable little lies and I'd never look past them. He was right for 14 months. But he made one mistake he never accounted for. He forgot what his father used to do for a living. He forgot that the one thing I've always been good at, the only thing really, is finding the gap where the lie lives. I opened my laptop, and I got to work. The next morning I filed for emergency guardianship of my mother, and I called an elder law attorney named Diane Okafor. Her office was downtown, and she'd come recommended by a prosecutor I'd worked cases with for years. She was maybe 50, calm, precise, the kind of lawyer who listens all the way to the end before she says a word. I laid it all out. When I finished, she took off her glasses and set them on her desk. "Mr. Crane," she said, "I want to be straight with you, because I think you can take it. What you're describing is financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, criminal neglect, and unlawful confinement. In this state, exploitation of an elder over $50,000 is a felony. The neglect, given her medical condition, is a felony. This is not a family misunderstanding. This is a crime, and from what you've told me, it's a well-documented one. I want two things, I told her. I want permanent guardianship of my mother, so he never has legal authority over her again. And I want that power of attorney revoked and every dollar he took accounted for. We can pursue all of it, she said. The guardianship we file today, emergency basis given the hospital records. The power of attorney, we revoke immediately, and we petition the court to freeze the care account. The money, we trace, and we let the district attorney's office do what they do with it. She paused. Mr. Crane, I have to ask, this is your son. Are you sure you want to go all the way with this? I thought about my mother saying, they told me you knew, and you didn't want me. I thought about the deadbolt on the outside of the door. He locked an 88-year-old woman in a room and told her that her own son had abandoned her, so she'd stop hoping anyone would come, I said. And he did it while he was buying candles and going on ski trips with her money. No, this isn't hard for me. I want all of it. Diane put her glasses back on. Then let's build it. I need everything. Bank statements, the payment records for your so-called facility payments, the condo sale records, medical files, statements from your cleaner, statements from the neighbours. You know how to gather all this? I do, I said. It's the only thing I know how to do. We started that day, and here is where 35 years of catching liars earned its keep. The care account was the first thing. Diane subpoenaed it. The condo had sold for $211,000, and that money had gone into an account my mother owned, with Marcus as authorised signer under the power of attorney. Over the 14 months my mother had been locked in that room, that account had been drained down to under $9,000. I sat at my kitchen table with the statements printed out, and I went through them line by line, the way I'd gone through 1,000 suspicious claims, and I built a spreadsheet. There was a payment to a car dealership, Marcus's lease on a new German sedan, $31,000 down. There were charges to Ivory and Oak supplier, restocking Danny's boutique inventory, close to $40,000 across the year. There were the vacations, Aspen, Cabo, a wellness retreat in Sedona that cost $11,000 for a week. There were restaurant charges, hundreds of them, some over $400 a meal. There was the $2,200 a month I'd sent him, deposited and then gone, spent on the exact same lifestyle. Not $1 had gone to a nursing home, because there was no nursing home. Not $1 had gone to my mother's care, unless you count the mini fridge and the paper plates. While her son and his wife ate $400 dinners, my mother ate cold food off a paper plate in the dark. I cross-referenced every date, every amount. I built a timeline that lined up the withdrawals with their credit card charges and their social media posts. Because Danny, of course, posted everything. There she was on a mountaintop in Aspen, the same week the care account paid for the trip. There she was toasting champagne at a restaurant the night a $400 charge hit. Every post was a little confession she didn't know she was making, and I saved everyone, screenshotted, dated, filed. Then I went to the neighbours. The Alvarados had lived next to Larkspur for 11 years. Mrs. Alvarado remembered my mother from the early days, remembered her sitting on the front porch in the mornings. She hadn't seen Nell in over a year. We asked Marcus about her once, she told me, and her eyes filled up. He said she'd gone into a home. He said it was very sad, that she didn't recognise anyone anymore. Walter, if I'd known, I'd have called somebody. I'd have done something. You couldn't have known, I told her. That was the whole point. He made sure nobody could know. The Kims across the street said the same. Nobody had seen Eleanor Crane in over a year. Everybody had been told she was in a home, losing her memory. Gone. The lie had a full cast of people repeating it back to me, and none of them had ever laid eyes on the truth locked in that back room. Yolanda gave a full statement. So did the officer. So did the medics. The hospital records were as damning as anything I'd ever seen in 35 years. And I had the deadbolt, the photographs of a lock installed on the outside of a bedroom door. There's no innocent explanation for that. You don't lock a door from the outside to keep someone safe. You lock it to keep someone in. The whole thing came together in about 3 weeks, cleaner than any case I'd built in my career. Because for once I wasn't fighting the family for access. This time I was the family. Marcus found out fast. Of course he did. The police had contacted him in Scottsdale once my mother was identified. He called me 2 days after I found her, at 6 in the morning, and his voice was pure, controlled rage. "What the hell did you do?" he said. Not a question, an accusation. "Good morning, son," I said. And I was calm, because I'd been up half the night with a spreadsheet, and there is nothing calmer than a man who has the receipts. The police called me. They said Grandma's in the hospital. They said you broke into my house and called APS on me. Dad, what is wrong with you? We had a system. We were handling it. You had a system, I agreed. Your system was a locked door and a mini fridge, and a lie you told me every single month while you cashed my checks. Silence. Then he tried again, softer, the voice he used to talk clients out of panicking. Dad, it's not what it looks like. She was sick. She needed to be somewhere she couldn't wander. We were going to fix up that room, make it nice. We just ran out of... There's a deadbolt on the outside of the door, Marcus. There are photographs. There's no version of we were going to fix it up that ends with a lock on the outside of an old woman's door. And her own son telling her that her family didn't want her. I heard that part, by the way. She told me what you told her, that I knew she was there and I didn't come. You told my mother that I abandoned her, so she'd stop hoping. I heard him breathing. In the background, I heard Danny's voice, sharp, saying something I couldn't make out. You need to give her back, Marcus said finally. I'm her power of attorney. I have legal authority. You're the one breaking the law here, Dad. You're going to end up in trouble, not me. You don't have power of attorney anymore, I said. It was revoked yesterday, and the care account is frozen, and the district attorney has your bank records. So come home whenever you're ready, son. There are some people who'd very much like to talk to you in person. He hung up. I set the phone down and I felt the strangest thing. Not triumph. Not yet. Just a kind of cold clarity, like the first cut of a saw going true through good wood. Marcus and Danny flew home 3 days early. He showed up at my door that night, pounding on it hard enough to rattle the frame. I opened it with the chain on. He looked terrible, unshaven, wild around the eyes. Behind him stood Danny. And even now, even in the middle of all of it, she had her phone up filming. I want to see her, Marcus said. You can't keep me from my own grandmother. I can actually. There's a temporary protective order. You're not to have contact with her. You knew that before you drove over here, which means you just violated it, which I'm sure the officer who's on his way will find interesting. You called the police on me, your own son. You locked my mother in a room and starved her for 14 months, I said. I stopped being able to think of you as my son somewhere around the 3rd day of reading your bank statements. Danny stepped forward, phone still up. This is elder abuse, what you're doing, taking a woman away from her family. We're documenting all of this. Everyone's going to see how you treated us. I looked at her, this woman who turned my family home into a magazine set and my mother into a line item. Document all you want, I said. I've got documentation too. I've got the deadbolt and the medical records and every charge from that care account, including the $11,000 you two spent in Sedona, finding your inner peace while she sat in the dark. You want to put that on your account? Go ahead. Show your followers the Sedona receipts. Danny's phone came down. Get off my property, I said. The house on Larkspur is in my name, by the way. Always was. So technically it's my property too, and I'd like it back. Marcus's face went white. You wouldn't. I already did. You've got 60 days. It's in the letter my lawyer sent this morning. You'll have it when you get home. They stood there on my porch, the two of them, and I watched something break in Marcus's face, and God help me. Some small part of me still hurt to see it, because he was my boy, on the kitchen counter once. But I thought of my mother saying, this bed is so soft, and I closed the door. The criminal case moved faster than I expected, because the evidence left nowhere to go. Within a month, the district attorney charged both of them, Marcus, felony financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, felony neglect, and unlawful restraint. Danny, felony financial exploitation and neglect, because she'd been a joint beneficiary of every dollar and had lived in that house every single day. My mother was locked in the back of it. The fallout hit them before the trial ever did. Marcus's firm suspended him the day the charges made the local news. Financial advisor charged in scheme to defraud his own grandmother. You can't run other people's money when the headline says you stole from an 88-year-old. 2 weeks later, they let him go. Danny's boutique, Ivory and Oak, the one that was about to be in a magazine, folded within a month. Hearth and Home killed the feature, obviously. Her suppliers, most of whom had been restocked with my mother's stolen money, cut ties. She posted a long, tearful video about being the victim of a family vendetta, and the comments buried her. Somebody had leaked the photo of the deadbolt on the outside of the door. One comment I never forgot. "You locked your grandmother in a room and posted from a spa. There's no video that fixes that." She took the video down in a day. The guardianship hearing came first. Diane and I walked into probate court, and it was almost gentle, because there was nothing to fight about. My mother had recovered enough by then to speak for herself, and she did. She sat in that courtroom, frail but clear-eyed, and when the judge, a woman named Marion Whitfield, asked her directly whether she understood where she was and what was happening, my mother said, "Your Honour, I understand it better than I've understood anything in a long time. My grandson locked me in a room and told me my son had abandoned me. My son found me and got me out. I would like to live with my son, and I would like the court to know that I am not, and never was, out of my mind. I just didn't have anyone to prove it to." Judge Whitfield granted me full guardianship on the spot. Marcus's power of attorney was permanently voided. She looked at the file, at the photographs, at the medical records, and before she moved on, she said something I'll carry for the rest of my life. "Mrs. Cray, on behalf of this court, I'm sorry. You deserve better than the people who were supposed to protect you. I'm glad you're going home." The criminal trial, they didn't fight either in the end. When your own bank statements, your own social media, your own subpoenaed records and a deadbolt on the outside of a door are all lined up against you, there's no story left to tell. Their lawyer, a competent man named Ross Feld, saw the wall and steered them into a plea. They pled guilty, both of them. At the sentencing hearing, I gave a victim impact statement, on my mother's behalf and my own. The courtroom was full. Reporters in the back. The whole thing. I stood at the podium and I looked at Marcus and he couldn't look back at me. "Your Honour," I said, "I spent 35 years catching people who lie for money. I thought I'd seen the worst of it. I was wrong because I'd never seen it wearing my own last name. My mother is 88 years old. She raised me alone after my father died young. She never once in her life let me feel unloved. And my son, her grandson, kept her in a locked room for 14 months, told her that I'd abandoned her so she'd stop hoping anyone was coming, and spent $200,000 of her money and $50,000 of mine on cars and vacations, while she sat in the dark, eating off paper plates. When I found her, she weighed under 100 pounds, and she thought she might be dreaming, because the last real thing that had happened to her in over a year was a door opening." I paused. Danny was crying. She'd taken her makeup off for court. The same trick. The wounded, innocent look. It didn't land here any more than it had on Judge Whitfield. "I've forgiven my son a lot over the years," I said. "For growing distant. For choosing a life that had no room in it for the people who loved him first. That's just how some children go. And I made my peace with it. But this, you don't forgive this. My mother will have nightmares about that room for whatever time she has left, and she deserved to spend that time in the sun. So no, I'm not here asking for mercy for them. I'm here asking this court to make sure that what they did to her cost them something real, because it cost her everything." I sat down. Marcus's lawyer talked about remorse, about first offences, about how they'd made terrible decisions under financial pressure, which nearly made me laugh because there was no financial pressure. There was only appetite. The judge listened without any expression at all. Then he sentenced them. Marcus got 4 years, 2 for the exploitation, more added for the neglect and the restraint, some of it to run consecutive. Real prison time, not county. Danny got 2 years. Both of them were ordered to pay full restitution, every dollar of the $200,000 from the care account and every dollar I'd sent for the fake facility, into a protected trust for my mother's care, and every dollar of my mother's legal fees. Both were barred permanently from any position with fiduciary or caregiving authority over a vulnerable adult for the rest of their lives, and the judge issued a lifetime no-contact order protecting my mother. When the bailiff came to take Marcus, he turned to me one last time. His face was a wreck. "Dad," he said, "please, say something, tell them I'm not a monster." I stood up. I looked at my son, the boy on the kitchen counter, the young man who used to fall asleep waiting for me to come home. "You put a lock on the outside of your grandmother's door," I said quietly. "You tell me what a man like that is." He didn't have an answer. There isn't one. They took him through the door and I watched it close behind him, and that was the last time I saw my son as anything other than the man in the mugshot. I sold the house on Larkspur. I couldn't set foot in it again, and neither could my mother. It went in 9 days, this market being what it is, and every cent of the profit went into the trust for her care on top of the restitution. There was something right about that, the house that had been turned into a stage for a magazine becoming, instead, the thing that would keep her safe and warm for the rest of her life. She lives with me now. I found us a place, single-story, wide doorways, a good bathroom, a porch that gets the morning sun because that's what she loves. A home health aide comes 3 days a week, a wonderful woman named Grace who dotes on her. My mother gained back the weight she lost. Her colour came back. The pressure sores healed, the fever cleared, and with it went the confusion everyone had used against her, and what was left was exactly who she'd always been. Sharp. Funny. A little vain about her hair, which is set and curled again now, every week because I take her to the salon myself. Some evenings we sit on that porch and she'll tell me stories about when I was little, and about my father, and about her own mother. And I realised somewhere along the way that I'd almost lost all of it. That 14 more months, and there'd have been no stories left to tell. Sometimes at night she still wakes up frightened, thinking she's back in that room, and I go in and I sit with her, and I hold her hand until she remembers where she is. The same way I sat with Marcus when he was small. Life turns around on you like that. I don't hate my son. People expect me to say I do. And I understand why, but hate would be too warm a thing for what I feel. What I feel is closer to what you feel about a storm that came through and took the roof off a house you built. You don't hate the storm. You just fix the house, and you don't rebuild it in the same spot. He'll be out in a few years. So will she. They'll have their records and their debts and a no-contact order, and a story that follows them wherever they go, and they'll have to figure out how to live inside the life they built for themselves. That's not my problem to solve anymore. I solved the only problem that was mine to solve. She's on the porch, she's warm, she knows exactly who she is, and she knows exactly who came for her. I spent 35 years finding the truth for strangers, for insurance companies, for money. Turns out the most important truth I ever uncovered was in my own family, behind a door with a lock on the wrong side, and it didn't pay a dime, and it was the only case that ever mattered. The cleaner I hired to make that house spotless for a magazine ended up finding the one thing they most needed hidden. Yolanda still calls to check on my mother. They send each other cards. Funny how that works. I hired someone to erase every trace of a life from that house, and instead she found the life they'd tried to erase, and she trembled when she called me, because some part of her already knew what I would find. If this story moved you, do me that favour I asked for. Subscribe so more people hear stories like this one, and leave a comment telling me one thing you'd do for a parent or grandparent who did everything for you. I read them. I really do. And if you've got an older person in your life you haven't checked on in a while, don't wait. Go knock on the door. You never know who's on the other side of it, hoping someone finally came. Thank you for watching. The next story's waiting for you on the screen. I'll see you there.